Welcome to SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. I'm your host, Susie St. Angelo, and thanks for being here. Today's episode is called Wired from Within, How the Brain, Gut, and Hormones Drive Energy. My guest is a return guest, Dr. Chapa, a more than 20-year functional medicine provider, and an excellent resource and a fascinating conversationalist about all things health. I know you're going to love this episode. So this podcast is for you if you know you want to change something. Maybe it's your career, your health, or another aspect of your life. And you might be wondering if this is the right age or stage in life to make that change. And maybe you just don't know where to start. Or maybe you're one of those people caught in analysis paralysis, afraid to take that first step. I know you. I was you. I understand, but you can certainly continue to listen to my podcast and get something out of every episode. There's one or two tips every guest offers, and I know if you just stay with me, you too can make some small changes that make a huge difference in your life. So a reminder, you can follow me on Spotify, YouTube, iHeart, Amazon, and Apple platforms. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's get into today's episode and meet my guest, Dr. Chapa. Hi, Dr. Chapa. How are you?
Hi, Miss Susie. How are you? Dr. Chapa here, and glad to be here. So how is things in your world?
Things are great. I'm glad to have you back for another exciting conversation about functional medicine and specifically the gut, the brain, and hormones. So for people who didn't get a chance, though, to listen to our first conversation, can you tell people a little bit about yourself and how you got into the functional side of medicine?
I sure can, yeah. So I've been in practice 20 years doing functional alternative medicine, and I've never told anybody other than I do and give people alternatives to drugs and surgery, teaching people how to live better, be better, and stay better one bite at a time. And, fundamentally, I have taught that all life starts and stops at the cellular level, and there's 37 essentially, I don't know who's the guy that counted this, 37 trillion cells in the body, and nutrition drives it all. And so as much as I'm a firm believer about exercise and movement, and as much as I'm a firm believer that, the body keeps the score mentally, emotionally, at the end of the day, if the vessel is fed well, it responds to the world much better in all other aspects of how we move and how we think and how we pray and how we experience life. And over 20 years, you can imagine, I've seen a lot of conditions, diagnoses. I've seen, frankly, a lot of miracles, successes, and I've even seen some unfortunate, failures and tragedies. And my favorite story is a lady who came in. She worked for the city. And she told me, I will not change my diet. I will not. She was staunch, like, oh, hey, simmer down. And, but she goes, but don't worry, I'll take every vitamin you give me. And I'm like, okay, well, understand, I'm a firm believer that vitamins and supplements are exactly that. They're supplemental to what we should be doing with our diet. However, I'm also a firm believer in I'll meet a person right where they're at. And there is no dictatorship here. This is you choose self-selection. So she chose to play her game inside a parameter for which I was able to, help and be a part of. And I was excited. Hey, come here. I was excited to, tackle that mission. And lo and behold, what I discovered is it didn't work. She was eating too many inflammatory foods, which then prompted this new pillar in my life called what you eat's important, but what you don't eat is more important. And isn't that good? People oftentimes do not realize the detriment that, yes, a lollipop can affect the body or a juice box can affect your body. If you have an abundance of yeast or bacteria in your body, and you put sugar in, you're flaming a fire that will allow bacterium, viruses to run rampant and create disease processes. So over my 20 years of work with patients and many, many travel dates to learn and teach and grow with other clinicians across the country, I have seen and gotten the great privilege of working alongside people in their, I'm going to use the word mess, in prayer that it'll turn into a great God message for people to be blessed by and inspired by, and generationally lives to be changed.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, as I was listening to you, when I got diagnosed and switched to a functional medicine provider, I realized how much a chocolate chip cookie was kind of the death of me. It had all the things that I wasn't supposed to be taking in. I'm like, no, that was my favorite thing growing up. But, I just think it was good education for me, and that's part of the process.
And I'm happy that you used the word chocolate chip cookie, because we can all relate. I remember being in the lunch line at every school that I went to, from elementary to high school, and they sold these chocolate chip cookies they were so warm that you could put your finger in the center of it and it would like fold down, and you would get pleasure in smelling it. You know what I mean? And it was so wonderful. I can only imagine the amount of forever chemicals that were in that stuff. That's probably still stuck in me somewhere that I'm still working to get out. But one cookie and one soda will paralyze your immune system for up to 8 hours. And this brings us kind of into the topic that you wanted to talk about today, is the power of the gut brain connection, and then bridge that into hormones, which essentially what happens is when you put inflammatory foods into your digestive tract, your gut lining responds to some of these things like an attack. And the immune system, 90% of your immune system is in your digestive tract. And so we vastly underestimate the power of your digestive tract, for which has 4 major functions. And it digests food, it absorbs food, it assimilates or manufactures nutrition for utilization in all places of the body, and it excretes waste matter. The excretion rate is probably the redheaded stepchild, if you will, of the digestive parameters. And we underestimate. People are so constipated, they're so sluggish, they're so backed up, and there's no gas gauge to tell you where you are on the fill level. And if you're 30% inefficient, like if you're supposed to get rid of 2 pounds of poo a day and you only get rid of 1.5, you're accumulating a half pound of waste, and that is a burden to digestion, absorption, and manufacturing. And so your whole body then is impacted at the immune level, the neurological level, the brain, and of course, we'll get to it, your hormonal level.
Yeah, I was going to ask you from a functional medicine perspective how the brain, the hormones, and the gut are connected, and how when before I went to functional medicine, I was going to traditional, and it would treat one aspect of that. I might treat the gut, or I might treat my foggy brain, but they're all interconnected. And it's a big question to answer, but.
Well, no, I think we can do it. I think we got enough time to dive in and just kind of dialogue back and forth. So I'll pace myself, because I can, power on through like a fire hose. And but at the end of the day, here's the truth of it, right? So if all life starts and stops at the cellular level and nutrition's the fundamental backbone, we have to recognize that the gut lining is an extension of what is on our surface, our skin. So your skin is a mirror of what's inside. So, one of the ways that we look at food, and if I could go back in time and let my children in a diaper or butt naked rub, baby food or all kinds of different food sources all over their body, I would let that happen. I wouldn't have been so restrictive on them playing with food, because we're taught, oh, you can't make a mess, and all the things that, oh, I don't have time to clean up the mess, and oh, I don't have time to power wash the baby off after they get all messy. But tactilely speaking, texturally, rubbing all that stuff on the skin is essentially training the external body, the extension of our gut, to test drive texture, smell, and frankly, I think even our skin taste, even though there's no direct sensory tasting response. And that's why some foods will create a rash when rubbed on the skin, or people just flat out get rashes when they eat certain foods. And if we would allow our children at baby level to play with and exercise the messiness of food on their skin, they will be less finicky because you're developing texture early. And texture is actually the fifth palate. So you have, a sweet palate, which no one ever has to adopt to. You have a salty palate, which you sort of have to adapt to. You have a sour palate, which is a little bit more tricky to adapt to. The hardest palate to develop is your bitter palate. The bitter palate is the key, though. Without it, your immune system doesn't get activated as well. And so when we have bitter receptors all throughout our digestive tract, and if you can learn to appreciate the taste of bitters, whether it's a bitter formulated herb like echinacea, chaparral, and golden seal, which is awesome for all the mucous membranes in every tissue, cell, organ, gland in your body, from your eyeballs to your nose to your mouth to your gut, is stimulatory to all mucous membranes in seconds. But this stuff is so pungent. Even the smell, it stains if it gets on the cabinet. And so you have to recognize that some of these bitter herbs are so stimulatory to your digestive system. You even have to integrate these types of things slowly. So like in practice, we'll dip it on this anatomical snuff box of your thumb and lick it off to train your palate. Because when you put a full dropper of this stuff in your mouth, which is less than a teaspoon, it'll turn your cheeks inside out. But when you develop the fourth palate, it's almost like you immediately evolve into that texture palate. And so one of the ways that we really work hard at allowing the texture to develop is getting a person to eat a new food at least 15 to 17 exposures to the palate, because a lot of us can't go back in time. At least I haven't figured out how to teleport back. So food is power, right? And our skin, again, is an extension of our gut. Our gut is an extension of our skin. And we're looking at the five palates, because when we understand we're working with a very dynamic system, we start realizing that what we put in our body matters. And if you put salt in a gas tank or sugar in a gas tank of a car, you essentially ruin the intra workings of the machine. And this is our earth suit. This is our machine. This is a race car ripping and roaring around a racetrack at 200 miles per hour. Now, as we talked about earlier, the gut lining, if you don't digest your food well, meaning you have acid reflux. How many of our listeners probably have struggled with acid reflux? They have that gas and bloating and that belly pain, or the dragon breath in the extreme where they burp fire. Like it's real. Like if you've never experienced it, you can't really appreciate it. And the only reason I can appreciate it is one time I was at a place and I indulged in some fried food and some delicacy foods I would normally never go to, but it looked so good. I just got enticed and I was weak. My flesh was weak and I gave in. And the whole car ride home, it was a 5-hour car ride home, literally would have destroyed me had I not had chamomile marshmallow in the cup holder, because I travel with herbs because, it's notorious somebody's going to get a little nauseated in the car. And chamomile marshmallow was a powerhouse in soothing the system. Had I not had that, I don't know if I would have made it home. It was so uncomfortable. And I was burping the whole time, lots of fire. And that was an indication of poor food choices. Fried food, bad oils, MSG, preservatives, forever chemicals, wrecked my stomach. And I was in this cocked, sit posture for 5 hours. My system just was not happy about it. And that stomach couldn't break that food down. And it sat in my stomach and putrefied in a matter of hours. And my system suffered greatly for it. And that is first indicator that you're eating fake food. And if you eat make-believe food, Susie, the best you'll ever have is make-believe health.
So also irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. Can you speak to that? Because that also is a part of the gut lining too, and how.
Yes, it's a huge problem. So now you're jumping down into that mid and lower bowel. And so let's just say we've been eating poor foods. And we talked about on your show previously the 4 deadly food additives and the 4 most common inflammatory foods. And if you're getting into wheat, dairy, corn, soy as the inflammatory 4, or the deadly 4, the partially hydrogenated seed oils, the MSG, monosodium glutamate, the aspartame, sucraloses, artificial sugars of the world, or the worst one, high fructose corn syrup, these are essentially gut bombs. And gut bombs disrupt the gut lining, and to the point where irritations start to happen. Irritations left unchecked lead into ulcerations. And now you've got so much irritation, you've got irritable bowel skin, irritable bowel tissue. And so now you've developed this irritable bowel syndrome where anytime you eat a green leafy vegetable, something that should be quote unquote non-inflammatory and healthy, it rubs across an ulcerated wound, and it's like putting salt in the wound, but it's in your digestive tract.
But can't particles also go into the bloodstream too?
Oh, so now okay, good question. So now this ulceration irritability issue now continues to degenerate. Okay. And that degeneration process continues to erode the mucous membrane. So your gut lining is a tube, like a straw, from your mouth to your hind end. And so the mucous membranes are like that soda straw. They're butted up against each other all around the circle and all length of the tract, which is about 28 feet. And those cells begin to separate. And that's called leaky or permeable gut syndrome, leaky gut syndrome. And so now undigested food gets in, which is now a foreign substrate that your body has no idea what to deal with, or bacteria or viruses or parasites or yeast particles or mucus plugs can slip into the blood across that membrane uninvited, and it creates inflammation. It'd be like, would you leave your house open to the public while you're sleeping and most vulnerable? No. Well, remember, your blood is your lifeblood. So if those cell membranes begin to get irritated to the point where they open up and have a gap in there, and there's 3 major little tight junction molecules called zonulin, occludin, and actomyosin at the micro. We're like micro. You cannot see this on a colonoscopy video camera. This is microscopic, and this is deep-rooted cellular irritation left unchecked because people aren't being taught that food is medicine. And so when we eat inflammatory foods, make-believe foods, this is the end result. And so this conversation now begins to do something interesting. This is the gut-brain connection, because now these foreign substrates can penetrate across the gut lining, your first line of defense, and it now is free-floating, loose, like a rogue agent in your bloodstream. Your lifeblood now becomes contaminated. It becomes oxidized. It becomes acidic. And so now your body goes, oh no, that's bad. So your body has built-in buffering systems in your sinuses, in your lungs, in your kidneys, in your skin, in order to buffer the blood's pH levels to keep it from being hot or acidic, or another word we might use is inflammatory. And so a person that doesn't, let's say, have any irritable bowel, but they've got chronic sinusitis, they've got chronic eye goo, they wake up and they're feeling like, oh, there's pressure in my ears, or they have chronic irritants and sore throat all the time. These are people that are using a secondary buffering system called the high lymph system from the collarbone and up to protect what the bowels have allowed across the membrane. So we're trying to protect the blood because it's your lifeblood. I wish we could get everybody to say it with us. Everybody, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, lifeblood, right? and it's so important we understand the lifeblood carries all aspects of life. But if it gets contaminated, your body, thanks be to God, has provided buffering systems to protect. So the second one would be your lungs. So your patients or people that are walking around with asthma, wheezing, air hunger, excessive yawning, these folks are suffering with this backup into the lung system, trying to convert these contaminants into a gas that could be expelled. Well, your lungs are not a good trash can. They are to move gases, not material. And so this is important. And then, of course, the skin, when it pushes out acne or rashes or patches of dry skin, dandruff in the hair, psoriasis in the scalp, we know that the skin is being used inappropriately to push trash that you should be pooping out of the skin now. So yes, that is a form of excrement or fecal matter that your body's converted into something you can sweat out of your skin. Ooh, that sounds gross, Dr. Chapa, and it is. But this is, your body would rather protect your vital core, your organ systems like your brain, which we haven't even got to yet, or your heart, and more importantly, your blood, in order to have a little bit of, skin irritation, because that is safer than you having contaminated blood. That makes sense, right? It's like almost like God knew what he was doing when he put this thing together. Almost. And praise be the Lord, And then the last place is kidneys. Okay, well, what people are suffering with in the kidney department is fatigue and swelling in the joints, swelling in the ankles. They have high blood pressure. I don't know a patient that doesn't have a mother or father that hasn't been told they have blood pressure problems. That's like the first gateway drug into the Western medical world is high BP meds. And it's because the kidneys are getting overused. Well, what are the kidneys' job? They filter the blood, right? So if the blood is acidic, then that hot nature acidity getting pushed through your kidneys, now left unchecked, beyond that, you get interstitial cystitis, or you get reoccurring bladder issues, or what we are calling, post-urinary dribble, or we blame on childbirth, this, prolapsing of the bladder and this other issues. These are all indicators that the body is malfunctioned to a point where now ligaments don't even get the nutrients from absorption to repair those tissues that hold everything in place. So now our infrastructure begins to deteriorate. This is mind-boggling. When you start thinking about it this way and slowing down the aging process, you start realizing there is rhyme and reason for everything. And so then the body does something really interesting. If it cannot get these toxins off the blood and out of these secondary exit channels, and all because the bowels are either slow, sluggish, stopped, or irritated, then it gets stored in your brain. And this is bad news, because the brain is your quarterback. Your digestive tract manufactures 3 million more neurotransmitters than your brain has. That's dopamine. That's the good, I feel good hormone. Serotonin, that's the joy-filled hormone. Acetylcholine, mental processing speed, okay? Catecholamines, other metabolic actions inside the brain tissues. Your brain has to have full quarterback capabilities to read the field and to maximize how it connects with a runner or a pass or dodge a defender. So the brain now takes on, unfortunately, because it is primarily fat, and your body loves storing toxins in fat cells. And if there's a glitch in the matrix of your gut lining, like the gut lining is leaky, your brain, there's this barrier up there called the blood-brain barrier that is also leaky, because they're literally made up of the same material. And so if you got leaky gut, you have a leaky brain, and now contaminants from all these inflammatory foods and forever chemicals and preservatives that are floating around in the blood are getting into the brain. Oh, now it's a mess.
Yeah, and so the brain, when people talk about having foggy brain, I know several women in middle-aged will say they have a foggy brain, and they will chalk it up to menopause. how much of it really is menopause and how much of it is really what you're talking about, and the fact that their diet is probably not very good, and if they cleaned up their diet, then they probably have better cognitive issues.
100%. And again, so the reason brain fog comes on, and we haven't even talked about the hormone piece yet, and there's a reason for that, right? Is because when the nervous system is fed well and quarterbacking well, the hormones actually play a pretty good, they balance out on their own. But when we go and we look at and evaluate the sugar intake, the sugar feeds bugs, it drives inflammation and acidity. And so we become essentially mucus filled. And so now our brain is working through like foggy lenses. The synaptic activity that should be rapid fire all day long and processing at warp speeds, mental abilities to make conversation happen and phrases connect and names, numbers, and words, and remembering while you walk into a room instead of forgetting. The brain now is struggling to work around the messes that are in the brain. And so the mucus is fed by the bugs, by the sugar and the fake food that we're consuming. So we have to get the food right. Food is medicine. Then we have to heal the gut lining, because that essentially stops the leakage into the blood. And then that also prevents mucus forming bugs in the system to run rogue. And now the brain has a chance to start cleaning itself up by activating a system in the brain called the glymphatic system. It is like your lymphatic system for the body, but it's specific to the brain system. And the glymphatic system is your trash can. And it drains and it moves trash through. So if you got ear pressure and tonsil issues and sore throat and pain in your shoulders and neck, this is what people complain about. And we just say, oh, I just carry my stress there. No. It's toxins that you're carrying there. And then your body says, well, look, I'm doing the best I can. So I'm going to not just store things in my brain. I'm going to store it in fat cells. Uh-oh. This is where people now start getting overweight and they can't lose weight. They've tried everything. And it's because the body hasn't been healed and fully redesigned to function like it was originally designed to, because just stopping the leak is one piece. Then you got to detox the body. All right. So you've got to give the body a chance you got to stop the bleed, and then you got to heal from the bleed. You got to do the repair process. And essentially when we come in alongside people, we look at the body as a whole. Like you were saying, we can't just look at the heart. We can't just look at the brain. We can't look at just your hormones. What part of the watch tells time? And the answer, all of it, right? And so we got to treat the body as such. And if the body cannot get the brain to quarterback correctly, the body is going to start storing in other places. And it stores trash in our fat cells and our joints. So now we have inflammation brewing in our joints. That's called arthritis, or what I like to call arthrongus, because there's nothing rightus about it. You know what I mean? And this is the aging process at its finest, and everybody knows somebody that's dealing with some aspect. And I understand that no one gets out of here alive. I totally understand the age, game and hair growing in places nobody told us it would grow when we were kids, and our hair turning colors and all that. I get all that. So I'm not saying that I found the fountain of youth and we're all going to live forever. We're going to live forever in Christ Jesus, but not necessarily in this earth suit. And so one of the things that I have to always remind people of is that, we just God gave us a brain and he expects us to use it. So we have to recognize when we're being lied to about food. And the more and more I'm learning about, I still, guys, learn about food. I was getting a massage in Arkansas when I dropped my daughter off the last time we talked at one of those cool bathhouses in Hot Springs. Really cool experience. Well, the guy was talking about this book called You're Not Sick, You're Thirsty. And I go, cool title, I'm going to grab that. Do you know how many cases of heart blood pressure issues, stroke recovery programs, skin rashes, allergies, asthma, all kinds of digestive disorders all went away just by rehydrating? And how many people are walking around dehydrated?
And people say that before you go to grab something to eat, drink water, because more than likely it's hydration and not hunger.
That's in 100%. And by the time you feel thirst, you've already missed the window. And then what do they do when they sit down? Then they eat and drink. Well, here's the problem with that. Now you dilute the gastric juices in your stomach, and it disrupts how well your stomach can break down the food. And you're only as good as the food you can absorb. But that's an interesting thought, because Dr. Chapa, the digestive tract has to digest it before you can absorb it. So what really is more important is digestion first in the stomach leads to absorption, so that you can maximize delivery of nutrition and then regeneration.
Which means eat your food and drink your fluids afterwards, correct?
30 minutes either side of the meal. That's a good rule of thumb. That's exactly right.
No, I was just going to say something about food, and I want us to get into hormones too pretty soon here. But eating a variety of foods and exposing your gut to a variety of different foods. And is there a standard by which we should follow? So many numbers of different foods a week, a day?
Yeah, so I have played the diet game. I have done every diet under the sun. I have been on a juice feasting program where I just drank, green juices at 1.5 gallons of juice a day, to keto, carnivore, to variety diets, paleo. Whole30 is a great diet. Here's what I would tell people. Like, if you have active symptoms and you've tried darn near everything, you have to sometimes back off the food variety in order to give your body ample time to just focus on a food group, highly protein, highly fat dense, because there's something called an essential amino acid you get from protein, and there's something essential fatty acids that you get from fats. We do not technically have anything called essential carbohydrates. So, part of the problem, we just overeat. So like you were saying, if you're hungry, go drink water, wait 5 minutes and see if it passes. And oftentimes it does. And so maybe you're overindulging in too many varieties too often, too frequent. So the more we recognize that our digestive stomach is most active between 7 and 9 a.m., you should eat like a king for breakfast, or in your case, a queen, a princess or prince for lunch, and a pauper for dinner. And so as you get closer and closer to bedtime, we should eat smaller and smaller meals. Now, if you're playing the intermittent fasting game, the rules are a little bit different. You could, eat in a tighter window, say 6 to 8 hours, and that gives your body ample time to get your calories for the day in, but it also gives your body ample time to do cleansing, or what we call autophagy, where your body gets rid of old, worn-out cells that have outlasted their useful life. And we know one bad apple spoils what? The bunch. And so we don't want any bad apples floating around in our cellular matrix. And so we want to give the body ample time to clean up. So when you have symptom patterns that you were not genetically born with, a more concise eating window and a tighter variety, or a restricted variety window, is actually a better plan.
It gives your body ample time to reset and to filter through everything. I have found that for me, if I stop by 7 o'clock at night and I wait until at least 7 or even later the next morning, that's a fast, and that gives my body time to just be ready for the next day. And
that's right. So you're doing if you did 7 to 7, that's a 12-hour fast. If you could even, if you have, again, if we're talking like people that have symptom patterns, that's everything from something as allergy to brain fog to something severe like hot flashes, in hormonal irritability and things of that nature, bad cycles, all the things. And so whatever the symptom, if you can expand it into the 16, 18-hour zone, that's even more beneficial, because you're giving your body plenty of time to exercise the hormones. So this is where your hormone connection kind of bridges in to the conversation, is when your body at the brain level is intact and quarterbacking correctly, you have a gland in your brain called the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is like the mothership of all mitochondria in those 37 trillion cells that we've been talking about. And so the hypothalamus in the brain is this little awesome gland, but if it gets dented because of trauma, emotional trauma, if it gets dented because of malnutrition, if it gets dented because of chemical insult. I met a guy yesterday that was exposed to Agent Orange in the military, and it's a ongoing neurological decline. So his brain is always fighting because no one's teaching these people how to clear these toxins out of their body. And so this is a serious brain neuropathy development problem. And so when the brain is on fire, its ability to communicate and to the hypothalamus goes down. So instantly, when you have somebody that has high toxic load and the brain is affected, their hormones are affected by default, because what happens is the system at large cannot move from the nervous system effectively, because that is prime, to the hormones, which are what we call vitality. Those are secondary. And so when a person has ample vitality, vim, vigor, and vip, potency, sex drive, drive for life, motivation, their hormones are really healthy. When they are kind of reserved and laid back and disconnected and not really motivated, more kind of just looking forward to the remote control, and you see monotone and there's no real power and punch in their world, they oftentimes have some level of disconnect between the activity level of the brain and the communication to the hormonal chain, hypothalamus down to the pituitary, which is the start. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you talked about this gentleman that you saw with the Agent Orange. When we talk about hormones, it's normally we talk about women and our hormones, but it affects men equally as well, correct?
Yeah, we've heard of, so that they call, so menopause is the girl version of the second puberty, when she goes from her fertile years to her menopausal years. So if you look at the hormones as a whole, you have a fertile window. So the upper echelon is your fertile years. Your lower echelon is your menopausal years, but still inside the normal window. That's the misnomer that menopause is imbalance. Menopause is just a signal of the second puberty. And so men go through this too. They call it andropause. And worse, when out of balance, they call it what? A midlife crisis.
I did not know the name of that.
The crazy man syndrome. It happens to dudes as well. And so to think otherwise is totally a misnomer. And guess what? This is so sweet, because now we're talking about this communication in the brain, hypothalamus to pituitary. The thyroid is your diesel engine. The adrenal glands are the gatekeeper to hold balance for both male and female in the fertile and or menopausal and andropausal years. And so as long as we have healthy adrenal glands, which your adrenal glands live on top of your kidneys, and they manage cortisol, they manage epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline, and a lot of blood pressure management. This is why when stresses go up, you get a blood pressure response, right? And this is a real situation. If you see people that not just hot flashes, the emotional crying, the weepy, uncontrolled, reaching towards stimulants or depressants to mitigate that feeling of numb, so they don't have to go into these spaces. Those people are outside their normal hormonal window. And that's where we get to intervene beautifully as a functional medicine practice. And sometimes, Susie, that is the place we start. I know the gut's everything, but they're so off the rails emotionally that if I don't turn down the cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine button by activating the hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid, adrenal, and gonadal, which is essentially the ovaries girl and testes boy axis, then I can't get through the noise. The noise is so fight or flight. The person, the The newspaper, it bothers them, and they don't even get the newspaper anymore. It's like a ding on their phone. Or the dogs barking irritate them. They can't handle bright lights anymore. I mean, it's really subtle that we just chalk up to age. But if you can't handle the sun or fluorescent lights for a time, or go into a busy, loud restaurant without having a bit of an anxiety attack and panic attack, that means your nervous system is raw. And it needs some adrenal stress management. It needs some thyroid management and pituitary management. And again, we haven't even got to the sex hormones.
So let me say something about that before we move on, because I had all those things affecting me, the gut, the brain, the hormones, with adrenal fatigue. And adrenal fatigue is obviously not something that traditional medicine really recognizes. They might treat one aspect of it, but to do that deeper dive as a functional medicine professional, to see that and to be able to start working on my cortisol, because it was flat. I mean, I was flat.
Yeah.
I would.
Bad news.
It was bad news, and it was total lifestyle changes. It was creating new ways to cope, new ways to exercise, new ways to eat, all those things. And I'm sure that there's a number of people that probably are dealing with it, don't know it, male or female, because it's a highly stressful world. There's a lot of information coming our way. There's a lot of people that are still doing the traditional medicine and maybe not going the step to functional medicine.
Yeah. And so, I'm sure they did some adrenal hormone tests to see your cortisol levels and maybe even measure your hormones. And again, that is a snapshot picture, right, to a place to start. And I would say that, if there was something of hope to offer every one of us, is that no matter what our body develops, it can undevelop. And I have seen, going back to the war veteran, this was a different patient, but he was on 8 psychiatric medications, had tics so bad that he could not function in life. I mean, if I made the gestures, you wouldn't believe me. The way he would make noises, and the tics were extreme. And to see where this gentleman has landed at this point in his career and his life and the things that he's doing, he's a musician. He sings to veterans all over the country. He is an absolute amazing guy. I just talked to him the other day, and he has been, off alcohol for almost 9 months or a year. He's been, he's down to a half of this psychiatric, medication. And it's just, I think it's more of he's got to have the faith to take that next step. And really, we've done a lot of work pulling metals and chemicals off of his nervous system so that the noise goes away. We've fed that endocrine system to undent the hypothalamus, to release the pituitary and thyroid to be metabolically proactive in our body, and to make sure that our system as a whole has the ability to get down into those adrenals and manage the cortisol of the busy, crazy life of the world, so that he would have a potency and an outflow of impact, in his sex hormones. Because when your sex hormones are balanced, guess what? You're excited about life. And so when women come in to see me and they have night sweats, when women come in to see me and they are irritable, when they can't lose weight, when they have all the peri and menopausal indicators, we oftentimes will balance blood sugar, we will repair the gut and support this endocrine axis using detox pathways, using restoration, support in cleaning up acidity in the diet, and making sure that the body has ample time to heal in those windows of fasting like we talked about. And then all of a sudden, like you were saying, the full body approach, now we're learning some new stress management skills and coping mechanisms, and not letting the world squeeze us. We are holding the line and saying, this is my life, it's my health, my choice. I got to make better choices and stop letting people rule me. We get great results in seeing people that suffered stop suffering.
Yeah, excellent point, an excellent example. And I would also say that the old standard of eat less, exercise more, while that might sound good in theory, for me, I was so much into cardio that I had to back off because it was affecting my my cortisol levels, and so to do that, I had to really shift my brain, and I have to do that with other people I work with because, we've gotten so used to power on, do more, when actually my body needed to back off. Personally, I needed to back off and walk more, strength train, maybe do some yoga, do some breath work, that kind of thing that was a little more calming for me.
We have to remember, like from a Bible perspective, God took the seventh day off, right? And so if God was demonstrating rest, I think we, as the lesser vessel, need to realize that we probably need to really honor that. And I was talking to a pastor just a few months ago, and he made a comment. We as a populace, I mean, Christian or non-Christian, do not rest well. To your point, busy is being under Satan's yoke. The world is going to tell you to do more. The world is going to tell you to power on. And it is a mindset shift because the narrative has lied to us for so long. It's very difficult to trust our own intuition and instinct, isn't it? And so what you have to do, if you have symptom patterns especially, is you've got to get under care of somebody that's coaching and developing and has got fruit on the tree that's working the system. Doesn't mean that they're perfect. Like, it's okay if you're not arrived at your metaphoric Camelot, but you're always evolving to one degree of change better. Every decade, you're better because of the things you do today, or unfortunately, you're more inflamed and worse for every choice that you made today because the power of the oak tree. When's the best time to plant an oak tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time? Today. So what you do today is going to impact tomorrow. And so the hope is that we start making enough of these lifestyle practice modifications and rest and slow down enough to give the body that time to go internally and start healing. Because I have patients with adrenal fatigue all the time that if I put them on an adrenal protocol, I tell them, if you start getting sleepy at stoplights, or you fall asleep on the couch the minute you sit down and it's only 6:30 p.m., that's a sign that your adrenals are so worn out that even me stimulating or nourishing or tinkering with them a little bit I'm going too fast. I have to back off, which goes to your point. You had to back off, quote unquote, good exercise because it was wearing you out, not benefiting you. So sometimes less is more, slower is progress. And we have to stop reaching for perfection or demanding instant gratification and find the truth in process. I just taught a class on the power of progress, not perfection, a couple Mondays ago. And the reality is we aren't celebrating the path of gap that we've come this year or last year. Instead, we always want the mountaintop. And the reality is we're always going to want more. We're never going to be satisfied. If I gave you an extra day for your weekend, you'd get mad that you didn't have a 4-day weekend, sooner or later, right? And so the message is enjoy the process of progress, and you will find victory more often than not. And not only when the gut is healthy, so having a good mental state allows the gut to heal and restore and slow down too. And you don't eat as much, you don't work hard as much. If I'm telling you to, or if you're telling me that you had to slow down your physical output, but you're eating 18 hours a day, are you giving your digestive tract a chance to rest? Well, no. And so we have to understand rhythm. So interesting, my word of the year God gave me is rhythm. And I find the rhythm. So this is a little nugget I'll share with those that made it to the end of our video, is this. Whenever we do a rhythm check once a week, challenge yourself to go 122 to 24-hour cycle with no food. Water is fine. Teas are fine. Heck, even no sugar, no creamer in your coffee is okay if you can handle caffeine. But understand caffeine does deplete you of nutrients. But we're just talking for the experiment, no calories for 22 to 24 hours, 1 day a week for 4 weeks. And just observe what you notice about how your weeks begin to go. you're going to start noticing mental clarity. You're going to start noticing this weird sense of controlled energy. And that's because you took the burden off the system, because the average American right now has 10 to 11 meals caked up inside of them, which bogs down their digestive tract, their brain, and of course their output, their sex hormone output. And so when you're looking at progesterone and testosterone and estrogen, we don't need to be putting pellets and creams and lotions and potions to get this to change. Managing hormones from the outside is extraordinarily difficult. What we want to do is we want to get inside, support the adrenal glands. We want to get rest and restoration into lifestyle rhythm, and we want to eat in a rhythmic way that gives the body a chance to rest, recover, detox, regenerate, repair, and thrive. And that's where you start seeing the hormonal output, that potency, that vitality, that vim, vigor, and vip that we all desire and want to actually make manifest and not be a pipe dream.
Yeah, that is tremendous advice, and you answered a few other questions I was going to ask you. So I want to kind of wrap this up today by asking you, what is your SOS today for those people who are listening or watching that want to take the next step in their health journey and have, better brain, gut, everything health? What would you say to them?
There's so many things. Okay, but I got one. Okay,
You can say a couple.
And I probably will. But me and my doctor friend were talking on Monday, and we were talking about blood tests. So I look at functional blood chemistry all the time, and we're looking at white blood cells, immune system responses. We're looking at the stress in the blood, again, that acidity, and seeing what's happening. Well, we were talking about the neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio and white blood cell ratio, and determining what is the underlying driver of it. This guy's been in practice 28 years, okay? And then he starts talking about yes, it's the ratio's real, and if you see this pattern, it means that they have an overloaded bacterial system, viral issue, yeast overgrowth, and it's all from sugar. Oh, and I'm like thinking to myself, really, it's that simple? Well, it makes me think of the book, The Sugar Blues. It makes me think of the book, Lick the Sugar Habit. It makes me think of going back 20 years ago, sitting with one of my very first mentors, Dr. Jeanette. She and I were talking over dinner with her and her husband, and she says, Aaron, if you could fix everybody's adrenal glands, and if you could fix everybody's blood sugar with a magic wand, nobody would be sick. Because when the adrenals have the ability to manage the stresses of life, and the sugar is not inflaming our lives, the body is extraordinarily resilient. And he went on for about 3 minutes, my friend, and he literally stopped about midway through, and there's this little section of silence where he says to himself, yeah, it's the sugar. The sugar is feeding the bacteria. It's feeding yeast. The bacteria and yeast are basically causing so much mucus buildup in the system. Viruses now take over. Parasites begin to run rampant, and the body becomes so biologically contaminated, dysbiotically imbalanced in the gut. The neurotransmitters in the brain malfunction, and the brain fog kicks in. The quarterback now can't communicate to the hypothalamus and the pituitary and the thyroid to keep the diesel engine running healthily. The stress management system runs off the rails, and people get in a perpetuating stress cycle where one little stress turns a molehill into a mountain, and they freak out. And then all of a sudden the sex hormones begin to sacrifice themselves for survival. So output and vitality will always lay its life on the altar for survival. And so if your hormones are out of balance, it's because you have a dumpster fire somewhere else biologically in the body. And we then have to look at sugar, number 1, gut lining, number 2, brain health, number 3. And then we support that endocrine axis, and all of a sudden the system just begins to turn on naturally. It's called the core 4. If we focus in that order, and we would get a lot of people better really, really quick. And in that journey, guess what's going to happen? They're going to do exactly what you discovered. You start making lifestyle practice, application over time. And you realize, hey, this is just the way life is. The nasty now and now is always going to press on you. You have to learn to be an athlete mentally and fight a better fight, and not just give in to the temptations of your taste buds or the comfort of stressful comfort living. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true. And you've got to advocate for yourself too. And you've got to listen to your body to be able to communicate with a professional like you, like what you're experiencing.
Every day is a new opportunity to discover where people's bodies are breaking down. And every one of us have a glitch, every one of us, myself included. And some people, you look at them and you say, oh, their life looks great. So people look at me all the time and say, oh, Dr. Chapa, you don't have any weight issues. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't know how hard I've had to work to get to a place to outperform bad genes, if you will, and not participate in the rudimentary practice of familiarity. So most people don't have bad genes. You can't blame cholesterol on mom and dad. You can't blame cancer on mom and dad. What you have to realize is you practice what you know. Most people do what they know how to do. Rarely do people do what they want to do because they just don't know how. And so the new way of living is a taught new skill, and that's hard. But what happens is if you follow a chocolate chip cookie recipe, you're going to get chocolate chip cookies. If you follow a recipe that drives diseases, whatever is in your gene code could make manifest more easily because you followed the recipe. Does that make sense?
It does. It sure does. So where can people get in touch with you if they want more information or they want to get in touch with you?
Well, obviously, this is a big conversation, right? We've covered the gut, we've covered the brain, we covered a little bit about hormones, but just more of the stress impacts of how the body will lay down sex hormones to, save the body. If education's everything. So at drchapawellness.com, I do on my YouTube channel, you can get access to all my vids, so to speak, and a lot of the resources that we have. I'm on all your social media platforms, and I'm just here to educate people and encourage people to choose life and choose life through choice. It's your life, it's your health, it's your choice. Susie, you nailed it. You have to advocate for yourself, whether it is how you, what you listen to in the doctor world. If the doctor you're listening to is not healthy, don't listen to them. If the doctor is telling you that cholesterol is your problem, they're way behind the eight ball. They don't know anything. Move on to the next person. If the doctor is telling you that food doesn't matter or they're not really interested in what you're eating, you need to find somebody that's a little bit more progressive in looking at food as medicine. If medication is all they offer, they are behind the eight ball. So at drchapawellness.com, I have a ton of resources and tools and programs, and it's evolving. It's just getting better. And I know this journey's extreme. I know this journey is a salmon upstream, but having a coach, having a guide, having a beacon of encouragement along the way is such a blessing. And I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't stand on the shoulders of giants. And so I welcome people to follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the major platforms. We're very excited to be in people's orbit, and just like shows like this, being a part of other like-minded people that want to just get a healthy message to folks.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. It's always fascinating talking to you. And I know we could go on, and I hope you'll come back and we'll have another topic. And I just think it's really powerful stuff. And you're never too old to learn. You're never too late to start. And, just these tips are things that you can do, and they make a huge difference. And you're going to see a difference. You're going to see that you sleep better. You're going to move better. You're going to think better.
Oh, there's our topic. Next class we do together will be on sleep. Sleep might be the another loaded gun that if we can get it right, it makes a world of difference. How about that for our next class the next time?
Yep. Well, let's do it. So thanks so much, Dr. Chapa. I'm so happy to have you again. And I know our paths will cross again in the near future.
I always look forward to it, Susie. Thanks for the time, and God bless all your listeners. And I hope to meet them in the digital space or live one day. That'd be really rad.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, friends, sadly, that's all the time we have today. Thank you for listening or watching SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. Thank you, Dr. Chapa, for coming back on this podcast and for our conversation. I just really appreciate you joining me. This episode was just an interesting subject about the brain, the gut, and our hormones. And it doesn't matter if you're male or female, it affects us all. And there are ways you can heal. And it doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter what stage you are in life. So I hope that you benefited from this podcast episode and you'll stick with me for more. So anyway, just a reminder on how you can support this platform. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. You can certainly follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and I'd certainly love to talk to you further. If you have any ideas for future podcast conversations, let me know. So until next time, take care, and I hope our paths cross again.